Welcome to DIYEasyCrafts.com. How to make a Dremel carved wood dragon. Now these dragons can be made in a variety of different shapes and sizes. This particular one is made out of cherry wood. It's a hardwood, and I made it after my friend Jason Northgard found a very unique coin while metal detecting. It's actually a Russian princess coin, and it depicts a guy on a horse with a lance spearing a dragon which is on its back. This coin dates to 1757. And instead of just throwing it on the shelf for display, I thought it would be kind of unique to create a dragon display or a coin holder shaped like a dragon in order to display this coin a little bit more appropriately on the shelf. Now you certainly don't have to make a coin holder. Dragons can be made in a variety of different styles and designs, and they can be crafted into different types of objects as well as just statues for decorations. We're going to use a couple tools, but the main tool is going to be a Dremel grinder. We're going to use a couple of different bits. This rough bit is used for removing the majority of the wood and also to start rounding over the corners. I also used a small round tipped bit to create all these little divots on the dragon's skin, kind of to illustrate the scales on a dragon. This bit I found about halfway through the project, and it really worked out nicely. You can use the sides to remove material and smooth things out, but you can also use that edge, the forward edge, in order to cut straight lines. So I probably could have done the majority of this project with this particular Dremel bit. I did use a cut-off wheel. You can also use these for doing the straight lines. This one in particular is a diamond impregnated cutting wheel, and instead of just cutting, it really kind of burned the wood and left a nice dark line. And this is another real small diamond impregnated bit that I used to create the nostrils and the eyeballs, etc., some fine detail. And I'll show you how each of these is used. So we're going to start the project just by drawing a dragon or whatever you want to carve out onto a piece of paper. I then made photocopies, and I glued that copy onto a piece of scrap cherry wood that I had. This is a 1-inch thick piece of cherry. And then I just used the pin saw to cut out that outside shape. It takes a little while, you just have to be careful. Notice that I drilled a couple holes through the tail area, the captive areas. The neat thing about a pin saw is that you can remove that blade, put it through a drilled hole, and then continue to cut out that captive shape. And here you see I'll just remove that pin saw blade, remove the piece, and that's basically the cutout. The next step, and this is all a very easy process. I mean, there's not a lot of skill going on here. But the next step is going to be to round over all of the edges and to start to give this dragon some shape. So I'm using that rough routering bit on the Dremel grinder, and I'm just carefully, slowly and carefully removing material, curving all of the edges of the base of the tail. And I'm holding a pretty straight line along the tail, the overlap of the tail. You know, anything that's going to stand out, the arms, the legs, the overlap of the tail, etc. And I'll go back and refine that with a finer tip or a finer bit on the Dremel. But this rough bit really works nicely, removes a lot of material very quickly. And you just slowly go back and forth. You have to do the exact same thing on both sides of the dragon. So again, I've outlined the arms and the legs, and then I'm just going to use this bit to remove and round over the belly below those upper arms. This was a scrap piece of of cherry wood. So one side had been finished. That's this dark side. And the other side was unfinished. And any hardwood would be appropriate for a project like this. You really want something that's tight grained. This is a drum sanding wheel. This is one of the smaller size drum sanding wheels. This is an excellent little tool for the Dremel in order to round over and smooth out some of the rough edges caused by that routering tool. You can be a little bit more defined and refined with it. But basically, I'm really just using it to kind of smooth out rough edges, round over, the neck and the face and the head, etc. This is that other routering bit that I talked about earlier. Really, what happened is I burned out my Dremel on this project, and I had to go pick up a new one. And while I was at Ace Hardware, I spotted this bit and picked it up, and was very happy with it. I wish I had it a day earlier. Then I probably would have finished the whole thing in one sitting. But this tool really allowed me to get into some of the smaller spaces, still smooth out a lot of those rough edges and create some of the curves. And with the same tool, I could then create some of the straight lines on the piece. So here I'm using it just to kind of refine the nose. And now I'm going to use the corner or the edge to create the groove for the mouth of the dragon. Just a really good all-around routering tool. And whenever you're using a Dremel grinder, you really should wear eye protection. Whenever I'm woodworking, I also wear a respirator. You don't want to breathe in all this dust. This is that little round tool that I was talking about earlier, and just creating little divots on the skin of the dragon to create the illusion of scales. And it's those little details that really make the final product kind of stand out. This is the small diamond impregnated bit that I'm using just to create the eyes and the nose or the nostrils and some of the finer details on the piece. You can almost just hold this, like a pen or a pencil and just kind of draw the details. It doesn't remove a lot of material, but it removes enough material. And then I went back over the mouth line with the cutoff wheel, really not to make the cut any deeper, but because this kind of burns the wood, it makes the wood inside that cut darker, so it stands out a little bit more. And everything with the Dremel is just done very carefully and very slowly. You just don't want to go too far. You don't want to remove too much material. Now, putting wings on the dragon was actually a second thought. My friend Jason actually recommended it. The wood that I had was too thin to cut these out of all in one piece for this project. And because it was a second thought, I made it out of two separate pieces of the same wood. And what I did was I just ground it down on the belt sander so that it was nice and thin, and then I used that drum sanding wheel to create some grooves on it. I cut these two pieces basically mirror image, and then these are going to clamp into position behind the body, in between the body and the tail. Now, I had already oiled that dragon before I decided to make the wings. I was originally going to just glue these in place with some two-part epoxy, but I figured that with the oil on the wood it might not stick all that well. So that's where the wings are going to go. And there's a little space in between the tail and the body. So what I did was I drilled 2 holes into each of the wings and inserted a small piece of wire. And these basically just insert male, female. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little 2-part epoxy on both sides of those pins. And then I'm going to press them together and clamp them together in position. And then once that epoxy dries, it ended up being nice and secure. And then the final step on this project was just to give it the entire thing another coat of oil. And I'm just using a butcher's block oil. And this will preserve that wood nice. It'll give it a nice shine, nice finish. And the wood will really absorb that oil. You know, another few hours, it'll just all soak into the wood. And that's basically it. A very simple, easy to make, do-it-yourself wood dragon that was carved out of hardwood using a dremel grinder. This particular dragon was made as a coin display for a 1757 Russian coin, which has a dragon laying on its back being speared. Now, please check us out on the web at DIYEasyCrafts.com. Be sure to check out our other how-to videos. And if you like this video, I ask that you please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this YouTube channel.